Have you had an issue with burnout? Now, the problem with burnout is it's kind of like this silent killer. We don't want people to know that we're burnt out. But the reality is, everyone around us knows that we're burnt out. It seems like we're always the last ones to know. So in my journey of actually trying to figure out this whole burnout thing, my own burnout, I actually discovered that there are 4 forms of burnout. Now, we're all familiar with burnout, right? It's when you run the tank dry. You're exhausted, you're really, really just over it with the stress. You just can't take it anymore. That's burnout. Now, in 1980, there was something called rust out. Rust out is actually when you stop growing, you stop progressing, and then all of a sudden you're stuck because you're completely rusted out. And now, for my mad science, and that is whiteout. I actually experienced whiteout, and whiteout is when you have an external condition happening around you, just like those blizzards. Like, who has been in a whiteout condition? It's terrifying because if you stop, you're gonna get it. Because someone's gonna plow into you. You have to keep white knuckling it all the way through until you get to where you're at. But the problem with whiteout is inevitably you don't pay attention to the dashboard and you run out of fuel. And you're in burnout. All of a sudden you're in burnout. And you don't even realize you're in burnout until you're on the side of the road with rust out, completely immobilized. And that's when the 4th form of burnout comes into play. It's called blackout. Now, what's really interesting about this is burnout is really being talked about a lot. In fact, we know about burnout like in the most amazing way because Arianna Huffington collapsed from exhaustion, truly, and now she has become the champion of burnout, which is so fantastic. Rust out? Do you want to know who the champion for rust out is? It's Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill had massive, massive rust out conditions. So do you know what he did? He got out a paintbrush and he started oil painting. And we can now see his paintings in museums and in private collections across the world. Whiteout. I was on my way to Park City to deliver a load of art. Now, guess what, you guys? I am not a starving artist. Can you tell? I actually am a professional artist. I'm on my way to deliver this art. It's 11 p.m. at night, and the blizzard is bad. It's so bad out, and I can barely see. But the problem was, as I'm driving to Park City, the real whiteout condition was happening at home, with my 16-year-old daughter fighting for her life. She's fine, by the way. And thank goodness I made it to Park City. The reality is, though, this whole last blackout, Amy is the one that taught me about blackout. She's a wife and a mother, 4 kids, and her husband is currently deployed right now, serving our country, and I'm so grateful for his and his family's sacrifice. But Amy is the one that taught me about blackout. And the reason why blackout is so terrifying, it's because you have all of these conditions going on around you. And you have experienced the burnout, you've experienced the rust out, you're experiencing the whiteout, and you don't know where to go. That's where I come in. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful in my own life that I found 4 tools to combat these 4 burnout forms. Play, rest, safe, and Muse. Let's talk about play. That's the fun one, right? I fell in love with Jack at the Humane Society. Jack was this amazing, cute little dog, but the problem with Jack was, and I'll be really, really brutally honest with you, somebody had been brutal to him. And he bore the physical signs of such a hard life. When I got Jack home, after I noticed all of the hard things on his body, I realized that something had happened to his heart. He didn't know how to do the normal dog things. He did not know how to play. It broke my heart to see a dog. Dogs know how to play. That's the one thing they are brilliant at, is play. Jack didn't know how to play. I loved on him. I took him to the vet. I played with him as much as I was trying to teach him how to play, but the reality is nothing was happening for him. He was so afraid that he was not able to play. And then, about a year into all of this loving and kind and showering Jack with pets, and one night I was up putting away my laundry, and I noticed Jack is doing this little wiggle thing. I'm like, Jack, what are you doing? And all of a sudden I recognized something. Jack's trying to play with me. A year of me trying to get him to play, and then all of a sudden, here it is. I grab a sock out of the laundry basket, and I do this, and Jack just comes alive. Jack was in a safe place, and he could now play. It took a whole year of safety in order for Jack to play. And now, this is really interesting, rest. Did you know that the 45-mile-an-hour couch potato is the Greyhound? I'm not kidding. A Greyhound will go 30 seconds of a sprint and get up to 45 miles an hour. That's amazing. And guess what? So do I. Well, not quite. I love sprinting. Now, this is the caution. A Greyhound, in order for it to stay healthy, for that 30 seconds of sprint, it requires 3 days. 3 days of recovery. I didn't learn that lesson until a long time after trying to not rest, until I was actually forced to rest. Who's been there, right? We have to learn our cycle of rest. And I'm not saying that it has to be 3 days for 30 seconds, but the reality is we need to pause and we need to figure out what that rest cycle looks like for each one of us. Now, I've already talked about play and safe with Jack, right? Let's talk about Muse. Now, going back to this art thing, everyone thinks that artists are really out there, right? And they're the only ones that really have muses. But let me tell you a secret. We all have a muse. It's just you have to find it. It takes some exploring to find your muse. And don't take this lightly, because the minute you find a muse, nothing will stop you from creating. Absolutely nothing. What's so incredible about finding the right muse? Do you remember back in that whiteout condition when I was so worried about my daughter Elena? During one time, an 11-hour surgery, the only thing that kept me going was my muse. Find your muse. Don't allow burnout to push you into blackout. We can't have that. We need you. We need you to be full engaged in your life, and ultimately, we need you to come and be part of our team and inspire all of us to be at our fullest, greatest potential. So now this is where the interesting thing happens. The bee, yes, the sweet little altruistic honeybee, when she determines that she is actually sick and ill, she won't come home. What happens in this burnout spiral is people keep cycling through these forms of burnout until they hit rock bottom. And the problem is, before they stop showing up, they may be showing up but not giving their all. And therefore it cycles even more down until that blackout condition happens. And that's why we're seeing epic records of depression and anxiety and suicide. We have to wake up. We have to wake up and ultimately move out of this burnout spiral and open up to these 4 opportunities we have to actually reboot so that we're no longer in burnout. Now, I'm just kind of curious, don't raise your hand because your neighbors will actually see this. Who's actually been in one of those 4 forms of burnout? It's terrifying, and that's actually why I created a diagnostic tool, because this is like the dirty little secret. I was actually talking to some of my friends and I was like declaring, I think I'm in rust out. I think in my art business, in my art world as an artist, a professional artist, I think I'm in rust out. And that's when they sucker punched me. And they're like, you're not in rust out, Rolinda. You're in burnout. Have you looked at your diagnostic tool? And I'm like, oh my gosh. Are you in burnout? Are you in blackout?